Recently, a bunch of YouTubers have decided to launch an attack against Brandon Sanderson and his fifth Stormlight Archive novel, Winden Truth. And I won't bury the lead here. The coordinated attacks are in response to the gay interspecies relationship that grows between two characters, along with the strong and independent women in the series, primarily Shallan and Yasna. Now, this would normally be something that we point to and laugh at these keyboard warriors for their ignorant, awful takes. But these attacks have become despicably personal and are an appalling example of how political stupidity can be wielded as a cudgel to hurt and punish creators who fans don't agree with.
A riot is an ugly thing, and I think that it is just about time that we had one!
So it's high time that we address this. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and in this video I'm going to address the insulting allegations hurled at Brandon Sanderson senpai, and how these people are spreading false information and perceptions. Then I'm going to tear into the absolute degradation in online critique, especially when people make it political or have no idea what they're actually criticizing. And finally, I will speak on the matter of how to deliver proper critique in this situation and as well as others. Now, 3 things that I need to note going forward with this video. First, just like Sanderson-san, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And though people often call us Mormons, I will refer to him, myself, and other members as Latter-day Saints. Secondly, I have not finished Winden Truth yet, but I am a third of the way through the book, and this will become important for when I address the criticisms lobbed at the story later on. Finally, I will lighten the mood of this video by doing as we normally do in the Harem group chat. Whenever Brandon Sanderson is first mentioned, we call him by his real name, and then we start devolving into silly nicknames for him. All hail the Lord of Dragonsteel, Brandon Sandersnatch! Okay, let's get the unpleasant stuff out of the way. Anyone who is claiming that Sandy Buns has betrayed his fellow Latter-day Saints, and that he's a bad member of the church, or that he's going to get excommunicated, is a fool, and a nosy fool at that. Brandon's status in the church is first and foremost between him, his God, and his bishop. And what he believes is, well, very personal, as it is for all of us, and that is between him and his God. It's as simple as that. Many Latter-day Saints in Utah, Idaho, and Arizona, where I live, would be well served to leave their homes, go abroad for a little bit, and realize that the majority members of the church are not conservative Republicans. In fact, with most of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints membership being outside of the continental U.S., personal and political views vary and are vast. And isn't that actually a wonderful thing, bringing all of these amazing perspectives together? People attacking the glorious man who has brought us Koloss head-munching day for his beliefs or his religion are being unnecessarily cruel, ignorant, and it's a shame that hurts far more people than the target of their ire. So people, especially other Latter-day Saint commentators, you know who some of you are, need to get their noses out of Brandon Sanderson's laundry and engage respectfully and critically with his stories. And before anyone looking for a fight brings up how I've taken J.D. Payne, Patrick McKay, George R. Martin, and Disney to task, well, that's what the rest of this video is going to address. Criticism should be informative and well-reasoned. It can be impassioned, blunt, and cutting, but when it devolves into slander, lazy insults, and provides no substance or opportunity for learning, growth, or change, then said criticism is nothing more than bullying. And unfortunately, it's far too easy to stoop to that level, and there's far too much bullying masquerading as intelligent conversations here on the internet. Even when I blow a gasket, getting angry at Amazon's Rings of Power, I do spend hours going over writing lessons that can be gleaned from it, looking for things to praise, and trying to give the writers the benefit of the doubt. You can even see for yourself the hours of time I have put into that, even if everyone else believes that Payne and McKay don't deserve that at all. But how does someone do this? How does someone approach criticism more respectfully and with a better understanding of what's going on? Well, you need to step back and try to observe the whole picture. And if we do that with Bramble's Snickersnoodle son, his small pet murdering novel Winden Truth, just look at this chonker, we begin to realize that the majority of criticisms thrown at both author and book are lazy, ill-informed, mean-spirited, and do nothing to help Sandy's son and other writers to improve. So let's break this down by looking at the biggest criticisms that I've seen currently thrown at Winden Truth. It's woke! Rennerin gets into a gay interspecies relationship with Relaine, a crab man. Shallan is so frustrating, and all of her mental problems are just too much to deal with. Yasna is a girl boss, and I hate her. This book is boring. Okay, first of all, what is woke? Stay woke is a phrase that goes back to the 1930s, exhorting African Americans to pay attention to societal and political movements that would affect them. However, this phrase was not truly popularized in the general vernacular until the mid-2010s as a response to many of the societal upheavals in America, and it was a way of saying that people needed to realize that norms and policies were set against minorities, allegedly. But woke also quickly was co-opted into a term that slammed all progressive ideals into one disgusting ball, which rapidly transformed into a kind of slur. By now, woke means anything progressive, and is therefore a bad, awful, nasty thing. Quite the evolution of a term, isn't it? And I'll leave it to you to contemplate and realize just how absurd this notion of woke has become.
Think.
Now, here's where this actually gets pretty funny, at least for me. The Way of Kings was Burgundian Scallywag's first novel in the Stormlight franchise, and it was published in 2010, and had already been worked on for years before its release. And in that first book, the Alethi religion and power dynamics are proven to be narrow-minded, sometimes bigoted, very prejudicial, and downright silly at times. I'm looking at you, safe hands. Imagine getting turned on by an exposed wrist or finger.
No time for sin and vice, living in an Amish paradise.
From there, the series tackles mental illness, the plight of regular soldiers, gender inequalities for both men and women, racism, and so much more. The Stormlight Archive was progressive before woke was cool. And you know what? Conservative and liberal fantasy fans alike slurped it up like fresh, tasty ramen, or devoured it like chowder if you prefer that particular image. So people complaining about it now is a little silly considering what Shattering Sun has been working on for over a decade. No, this story isn't woke, at least not in the way that people nowadays think. Though you could say that the characters within it slowly become awakened to the truths of their society, their world, and their place in the Cosmere, which is what Sanderson has been working towards for 2 decades now. However, let us consider when woke does go bad. I think the Critical Drinker says it most succinctly. When the message becomes more important than the story or characters. You see, there are all kinds of amazing stories that have highly controversial topics, themes, scenes, and characters that work because the story was given consideration before the author's personal beliefs. And when the author's message clearly derails and undoes the story, that's when it gets bad. Winden Truth could take a very bad woke turn, for example, if Dalinar is now so inspired by Rennerin's love for crabmen that he divorces Navani and takes a crab husband of his own and declares that the Alethi can only beat the Singers and Odium by macking crab folk of the same gender. And they all do that, and Roshar's now magically saved through their love. See, this would be bad because it's utterly ridiculous, it goes against all the world building, but even more importantly, Dalinar and Navani's relationship is the one that's been built up for over 4 books. and they've already broken societal and religious norms by getting together. And Simperson has spent loads of time showing us just how well these two work together. Destroying that amazing relationship for a baffling message ruins the whole story. If an author wishes to champion a certain message, philosophy, or point of view, it must be played out by the characters in the story and in a way that makes sense. It's as frustratingly simple and complicated as that. And speaking of relationships with crabs, I'm going to be brutally honest with y'all. If Renarin was in a heterosexual relationship with a busty crab woman, the majority of people complaining about him getting together with Relaine would shut up. In fact, if Ashonai was still alive and got together with Renarin, saying something like, "Pierce me with your shard blade, little prince," depraved dudes everywhere would be championing this development. I mean it! But I'll also say this, I wouldn't mind if Ashonai came to me, but that's an entirely different matter.
Awkward. Well, who's got my key?
Do you think Granny would mind if I went through a garbage?
Complaining about Renarin and Relaine coming out and liking each other is honestly kind of silly from where I'm standing, because Brandy Smithyson already hinted at this before the 5th book. On top of that, Renarin and Relaine are far more than their sexual orientation. We've gotten to know them across multiple books, as outsiders, as heroes, as thoughtful dudes in their own right. Their sexuality is just one facet of the incredible complicated gem that both characters are. So if you're not a fan of gay characters in a book, well, that's just honestly your taste. But it's not inherently a constructive or even a worthy critique of whether or not Winden Truth is a bad book. Instead, it comes down to how their relationship is handled, and I'll be able to judge that better for myself once I am done reading it. Now, what about Shallan and Yasna? I know that Shallan is not everyone's favorite character, and that's okay. But her mental illness is right up there in importance with Kaladin's chronic depression, Tef's addictions, and Dalnar's PTSD. It's integral to her character. So I'm not going to argue that at all. And as far as Yasna goes, yes, she's a girl boss. 100%. And as I've explained in other videos, girl bosses are not inherently a bad thing when the trope is executed properly. But the thing is that so many people seem to miss that Yasna is convinced that she's right when she's clearly not in several instances. And this has been a theme since the very first book. So the question is, if Sanderson will allow her to be humbled, and how that will affect her character and the plot. And I'll have to just keep reading to find out. Finally, in terms of criticism, is Winden Truth boring? If a reader finds the story boring, then they need to explain why. But honestly, as I've been looking around, I haven't found many good explanations as to why it's boring, other than that it's woke, therefore it's boring. Ha! But for myself, I've been very engaged in reading this, as I've seen the Alethi Law being discussed, battles have been set up, getting Seth's backstory, which I've been wanting for so long, and along with many other things that I've enjoyed. Sure, all the modern talk about therapy is, in my opinion, a little silly from time to time, but that as well has actually been set up thanks to Rhythm of War. So the talk about therapy, psychiatry, psychology is to be expected. Now, there's been plenty of other complaints and criticisms that have been thrown at Branding Sans people, but whether or not any of that's good, it's been largely buried under the accusations that Sanderson-sama is being a bad Latter-day Saint and that people don't like his woke characters. Here's the really ironic thing, though. Many people who are making these complaints were singing Sanderson Saint's praises over a year ago. When the year Sanderson blew all crowdfunding records out of the water and angered many jealous authors and traditional publicists, these people held up Brandon Sanderson as a champion of resisting the woke and the system. And in many ways, it was a triumph for independent publishing. But that is honestly an analysis for another time. Right now, these one-time fans turned raging critics have changed their minds on Sanderson-kun because they feel betrayed. The thing is, Braden's only been writing and publishing what he's wanted to now for years. These people are only just discovering who he is and what his stories entail. And what's even more laughable is that these things that they're complaining about are the smallest fraction of the amazing battles, twists, and world building, character development, and so much more that takes up the thousands of pages within the Stormlight Archive. It's literally like throwing out the whole feast because you spotted an annoying fly down the table. So let's finally blow this annoying popsicle stand by addressing how to make criticism meaningful and helpful for other fans and creators. And I will do it using at least one of the complaints I've already covered. Because at this point, why not flex a little? Brawling Super Smash Son once made a great point of telling other writers that if they want feedback and to give good feedback, it's not enough to say, oh, I didn't like this. I was bored reading this. This character just doesn't work in this scene. What you should say instead of something like that is something more along the lines of, I enjoyed reading your story. However, there are some problems that I had. For example, I didn't like X because of Y. I think if you did Z instead, it might work better. Or, I unfortunately got a little bored here in this part of your book. Perhaps if you made these characters move or do something important while they're talking, this long scene might be more dynamic. Just as a couple of examples. So utilizing that insight, a good bit of criticism might be, Brandon Slippy Slap, I think it's a little strange that characters in a magical medieval setting are using advanced psychology and psychiatric terms, especially when you have Wit say that Kaladin is developing therapy for a planet that it's never had before. What if you tried describing certain medical terms differently? Not exactly dumb it down, but make it more something like what someone would say in a medieval setting. And then maybe Kaladin or other characters come up with more acceptable terms that are relatable and recognizable to the audience. This would help the whole process to really feel more organic. Now, seeing as I have not yet finished the book, I will hold off on going deeper into detail, because I need to see for myself how Rlain and Renarin's relationship is handled, and how Shallan and Yasna develop as characters. And by the end, I can tell for myself if I was bored or not. And who knows, maybe I'll walk away from the book feeling absolutely let down, betrayed, and frustrated. But when it comes to a good review and criticism, while it's fun to get passionate, pedantic, and make witty comments just like Wit does, you need to remember that criticism serves us all best when it's meant to encourage improvement. Even when you absolutely disagree with a story and its author, and you might even be deeply insulted, you can still find good advice and lessons to pass back or pass onward to others. Ultimately, we need to seek understanding, respect, and true insight. And whenever I am done with Winden Truth, I hope to deliver to you an honest but respectful review and analysis. And even for stuff like Rings of Power, I will still give them the benefit of the doubt. Even if, in my fury and everything, I feel like they don't deserve it. Because otherwise, I'm no better than a cartoon-faced bully online. And such a person has never helped anyone become a better writer. With that being said, hopefully you are now better equipped to dole out critiques of your own. You better understand some of the savagery surrounding Brandon Sanderson Dono, and you better understand some of the events and terminology that have led to this embarrassing mess. Now, go forth and write! And if you'd like to support the work that we do here on our channel, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, check out the books that we ourselves have published. Links for all of them are in the description below. Thank you so much for joining us on this crazy, sometimes volatile adventure that we call writing. And until the next episode, y'all, tschüss.